Dana, one for you. Can you confirm the plan is the winner of Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blaydes fights the winner of Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic?
Absolutely.
We're going to do this thing.
I would hope so.
I would love to, man.
I would hope so.
Respect, man.
All the best.
Respect.
Yeah, I don't see this as a contest. I think what happened last time with the knee blowout was just pure. That was someone just riding on his injury, seeing how it goes, and if it works out, it works out. I think that was a freak accident.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah, you're like super confident in Tom, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. Why wouldn't you?
It's hard not to be.
He finishes everyone,
and especially because Blaydes has been knocked out previously by a lot of people. I don't know. I guess it's just always trying to give respect to the opponent, no matter who the opponent is. I think if you ask,
what does it matter if it's everyone can always win, everyone's got a chance, but it's like he has proven so far that no one's been a problem. I don't see anything that suggests why he would lose. If you can go in there and you can beat a striker in striking with no notice.
Yeah, like Pavlovich.
Yeah. And the Pavlovich had a camp for that fight.
Yeah.
And he went in there and just solved the issue within, what, a minute and a half or something like that?
Well, I think that's going to be the interesting aspect here, because we're going to see another kind of realm to his game potentially, is what does he look like off of his back? You know, you would think, at least at some point, even if it's just for a fleeting moment, that Blaydes is going to go for a takedown, of course, right? So what does that look like? What does that look like when he's trying to get up from a scramble, you know?
That'd be really important to see, especially if we do want to see a Jones fight one day. But I honestly don't think it'll get there.
Will anything about this performance possibly change Jon Jones's trajectory?
Right.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier. I mean, you know, Rogan just had Francis Ngannou on. It's most likely bullshit, but supposedly, and Rogan kept mentioning this throughout that podcast, that the UFC is trying to do a Jon Jones PFL crossover. Is that ever an option for Aspinall? Like, could you ever see them saying, all right, well, yeah, Jones is kind of going to go to jail now. We don't know what that sentencing is going to look like. Let's sub Tom Aspinall, and he needs, because that is the problem. This is what your whole video is about.
Yeah.
That we worked on a couple months ago, is that at the end of this, it's kind of strange. Like, I don't think this has really ever happened. I mean, minus one or two situations where Tom Aspinall is in a situation where he could win this title, and it's just a flat fucking road. There are no more hills to climb if Jones leaves and Stipe leaves. Like, I'm not saying that there's not going to be some new prospect that's going to crop up, but, you know, we've already talked about the guys like Jailton Almeida. He just got KO'd by Blaydes. I don't think anybody's going to be hyped to see that. Like, the UFC, let's be real, they've pinned themselves into such a corner here.
Yeah.
If Jones, if they don't pass the baton, because here's the thing, they get one money fight out of it. They get one big money fight out of it with Jones and Stipe. And I do think that there is a lot of value there. But outside of that, they're gone. There's no baton passed. Aspinall doesn't then have this massive hype and momentum. I guess to answer my own question, it's got to be Alex Pereira.
Probably, if they want to do something special, unless he just does what Phil DeFries did. Just hold on to the title and fight whoever the fuck for like 6 years, right? Which is not
He needs
not
a
gonna happen.
rival, though, you know?
Yeah,
That's what Jones is supposed to be right now.
I don't think anything is going to happen.
Just Spain. He's coming.
Yeah, the big boy.
He'll be good.
He's got the bigger reach. Yeah, I don't think anything's going to happen without Jon Jones. I think all of these things we're suggesting has to happen with Jon Jones because he's the money guy. Like, the Francis and Jones fight was what they wanted to happen. It didn't. And it seems like Dana does not want to work with Ngannou whatsoever. The Saudi Arabia Riyadh season would have to offer him so much money to co-promote. And he would only do that with Jones because he's the biggest star. UFC do not like the idea of co-promoting, so I don't think they would use their lesser star to fill that void when they have Jones.
There are some guys that can make compelling fights if they get wins, like Garn. If Garn picks up 1 or 2 more wins, that could be an interesting fight against Tom, just because, you know, it's an interesting matchup.
Albeit diminished, but yeah, it's probably one of the better options.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, you know, even some of the heavyweight prospects coming up are guys like, Mick Parkin. But like, he's a great prospect, but he's just his teammate, you know? I mean, I can't really think of heavyweight prospects. Anyone?
So then here's kind of a bigger overarching question then. What does this win mean? I think a lot of people already regard him as the true champion. What does it mean for Tom?
I think there's maybe 2 options, and one's maybe looking into the future a bit more. But I think any successful defense he has, I think is demeaning to Jon Jones's title. 100% that weakens that, because we're showing a committed guy who's willing to step up and fight for a belt that it doesn't really mean anything. If he goes on and puts a 3-4 fight title defense together against whoever, are people going to look at him the same way as they do a Stipe or
When
a
you say
Jones?
people, do you mean all fans, or do you mean new fans or old fans?
Well, look, if you put a string of title defenses together, you are going to become known. You're going to try and go for that Stipe greatest of all time moniker.
Does it matter who they're against?
That's what I'm saying. Because can he just rack up wins like a Field of Freeze and he's like the greatest?
Yes.
Or
Field of Freeze
are people
is
going to
the
be like,
greatest.
yeah, but look at who he fought. Fucking no one. All the shit cans left in division.
I think they'll form their opinions based solely on the performance of his last fight, because that's how this sport works.
Yeah. So,
Well,
but if he just
off the back of that as well, though, like, do you think that Tom Aspinall needs to fight Jon Jones to, be the best? Can he be the best of all time without a win over Jon Jones or Stipe or whatever it might be, or even Francis Ngannou?
Yeah, the incredibly difficult thing is like, we have no one to compare Aspinall to after this fight. I mean, we do, but we don't. Like, everyone else had the benefit of all these champions that came through the division. The JDSs are gone. They're never coming back. Cain Velasquez, gone. Like, all those legends, the one former champion that he's beaten is Andrei Arlovsky, who's not even in the UFC anymore. He finally just got let go. Yeah, it's horrendous. Like, I think this is why so many people are up in arms with Jon Jones, because they realize, like, dude, you can really go out as the greatest. If that's what you want the legacy. And I know some people will never give him that distinction, but he has that opportunity to say, well, I just beat your new top guy. Fuck off. I'm gone. That is a much bigger statement than anybody, like, realistically. Everyone knows the Stipe win. Yes, he's the greatest champion of all time 4 years after he last fucking lost. We don't care. Like, at this stage, maybe if Stipe gets a win and he proves himself that he's ready for the title picture, okay, fine. Then it's more interesting. But he hasn't done that. So we do end up in this situation where you just have this, what appears to be incredible talent, without anyone to fucking fight. It's horrendous. Like, it's the worst possible situation you could be in with a champion like that. Jones, the entire reason he's fighting Stipe is because he's the greatest heavyweight of all time. Meanwhile, literally everyone knows that's bullshit right now. He was the greatest of all time, and he could potentially be that, but he hasn't shown that in so long. He's coming off of a loss, so nobody is regarding a win over Stipe right now as meaningful in the slightest. Nobody is. Like, you look at the comments on your video, for instance, there's no detractors that are like, no, you're wrong. Jon Jones deserves so much credit here. They're literally all just like, fuck Jon Jones. He should be fighting this guy. I guess one question, maybe I could ask this to you, is in 10 years, are people just is it going to be the classic thing of, oh, well, yeah, that's a win in his column, and that was the greatest heavyweight of all time? Or is it just too well known? The secret's out. We already know. The gig is up. What the plan is here?
I think people will always know what the narrative is if you're a hardcore fan. Nobody looks at what Kung Lee and Nick Diaz did to Frank Shamrock and think that they beat the greatest fighter of all time. He was way past his prime.
True.
And that is the narrative that everyone remembers. But I don't think that Tom has to fight Jon for his legacy. I think if he fights him now and wins, it would be fantastic for his legacy. But if Tom continues to defend the title 3-4 years down the line and racks up more title defenses than Stipe, I think his legacy will stand the test of time by itself. There will be this moment where he didn't fight Jon, but everyone will know that's not his fault, and he still fought Sergey, Blaydes, everyone else who was the best heavyweight at the time. The only guy he didn't fight was Jon Jones. If he can build title defenses, I think his legacy will be just fine if he never fights Jon Jones. I don't think,
I disagree, though, because to me, what it means is it's incomplete.
Right, okay.
Like, when you look at who did Stipe fight?
Well, everyone has to beat the
He
champion.
fought Alistair Overeem when he had legit earned a title shot and he was off the off the sauce. I'm sure he was on something.
All the old champions, Verdun,
Exactly.
Overeem, everyone.
And that's the problem. You can do that for 4 or 5 years. Was he going to do? Beat Volkov again? Is he going to fight Blaydes a third time?
I mean, we've seen that in other divisions. People still get, champions clean out their divisions and then we still give them respect. Anderson Silva cleaned out his division. He did it twice. GSP.
No. But Anderson Silva, he had like former champions. Like he had guys like Vitor Belfort, who was a light heavyweight champion and who came down, who was a legend of the sport. Chael Sonnen turned that into something, and Chael Sonnen was on a impressive win streak. You were legit watching back then when he beat Nate Marquardt. You were like, that guy absolutely deserves this title shot. He is the guy, and he has the style on top of that. Dan Henderson, when he was coming over from Pride and he was a 2-weight world champion, just knocked out Vanderlei Silva. He absolutely had these big names to help build him up. That's the difference. Tom Aspinall has nobody to help him do that. And that's why the pressure is so hard on Jon Jones. That's why everyone is so kind of up in arms about what's happening, because we all see it in real time. We know exactly what's happening.
But do you feel like people won't look back at Sergey Pavlovich and say that guy was just not anywhere near as good as people were sort of bigging him up to be as he was KOing people in the first round?
No, that's a great question though, because look at the Volkov performance.
Yeah, no, but that's after. Because you watch all of his fights. He was on a 6-fight knockout streak. Right, and he was just blasting everyone in round 1. He was just going forward, throwing punches and catching them and putting them away. After he'd been knocked out himself, he looked incredibly gun-shy in that Volkov performance. He looked like he was trying to be calculated, trying to pick his moments, and that's not what got him to that interim shot.
Was he gun-shy because he was losing the exchanges?
He got
popped a couple times and he started to become reticent about
he got knocked out,
overcommitting.
He looked like, to me, he was trying to be calculated, and it backfired on him because Volkov was too clever. He had the reach on him and he couldn't get to him. And so I think look at how impressive this guy was. He was destroying everyone, all the heavy hitters, and then he meets Tom and then he loses. And I'm not saying Pavlich is going to continue to lose. If he carries on to lose and lose and lose, maybe that will change. But if he comes back with a better performance and gets those wins again.
Well, so who did he beat on that streak?
Maurice Green, Shamil, Lewis, Tuivasa, and Blaydes. So it's not like...
Blaydes is good.
Well, it's the same situation before we don't have any old champions in the division.
I'd also say, like you were saying, live by the sword, die by the sword. But it's like he was swinging and knocking people out. That's what they're best at. And then that happens to him against someone who you would maybe consider brawling is not his forte or the thing he's good at. Whereas Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa are all very strong opponents in that chaotic sort of trading style,
They also knew each other as well. I think Volkov probably had a lot of success in the gym, and that translated. I think that translated to the real fight.
Again, for me, I think if Tom gets the Jones fight, it will do a lot for him. But I still believe he can build his own legacy. What you said definitely makes sense, helping the champions. But there are champs who still did. GSP had a whole string of time where he was fighting Condit, Thiago Alves.
It's not comparable.
But that's what
he was fighting the best. He beat Matt Hughes, bro.
Yeah, but
Matt Hughes was the greatest champion at the time.
I said early on, he had those champions. A lot of guys had those. Jose Aldo had those champions, but then Jose Aldo becomes the GOAT of featherweight when he's beating guys who don't have these huge championship
Condit was so well respected. Alves was so well respected. But John Fitch, when he fought for the title, he had a lot of finishes.
But those challengers will come up for Tom in 2-3 years down the line. He'll get those kind of guys. Thiago Alves started in the UFC, became impressive, became a challenger. GSP beat him. It's the same thing for Tom. He's going to have these guys. He doesn't have the championship credential guys, which is true. He doesn't have former champions to beat. And a lot of those guys did. They had the Matt Hughes. Even Jose Aldo had like Uriah Faber. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't have that entry, but they still built GOAT legacies. Do you think the division's like just slowed down a ton? Like it's just, I guess we're just at this point in time where heavyweight has just become what it is, because lightweight, welterweight, there's still tons of like other, not tons, but when Usman and Colby were coming through, they could fight the Lawlers, they could fight the RDAs, guys that have held belts, even if they were fighting Pettis or something, he's around. So are we just at that point in heavyweight where all those guys are just old? Has the division just moved so slowly that we haven't
think it comes back to the point that was made that there's a lot of guys that aren't that technical in heavyweight, and it's like
they win and lose a lot.
Yeah, they win and lose a lot because anything can happen. It's because really they're predominantly strikers who are swinging, and sometimes you get caught by something and then you change belts.
Well, like this is more than just about heavyweight. It's like the big men in the UFC have been like declining big time. It's a barren wasteland. I don't know what's going on with MMA and why they can't seem
make big
to
men.
find big guys.
Some of it's interesting as well because a lot of those guys had come from other promotions. You know, there are like guys who brought titles in from elsewhere with prestige, and we don't have that anymore.
Yeah, like Vadim Nemkov, Malikin, like some of those dudes that are fighting in these other organizations. I mean, Renan Ferreira, you know, like even him, just the way he knocked out Ryan Bader was extremely impressive. There are some really great dudes that are not in the UFC right now that they could really benefit from.
That's true.
But the UFC's always had that as well, you know? It's like, even when Strikeforce, I mean, look how stacked that Strikeforce roster was. You had Josh Burnett, Alistair Overeem, DC.
But then we got
you
all
had
of it.
all these guys. Yeah, like they all ended up coming over after that, but you weren't looking at the UFC's heavyweight division and be like, oh man,
At the
like
time.
it was good then.
Yeah, it was
You
good
know,
at
you
the
had
time.
Kane and JDS
Yeah.
at the top of all that.
Shame.
You know, it was crazy.
I know. Let's just get Parker Porter back.
But
Shove him up
even a
there.
guy like Usman's brother, he's lost twice now.
Yeah,
Isn't
but
he?
it's like I don't like Mohammed Usman.
Right, but the point is, like, who the fuck else have you got as a named prospect? Do you
Yeah,
know
but
what I mean? Like,
he's only got a name because of his brother, and he kind of proved that he's not his brother. So.
sure. I mean, but that's the best we got heavyweight.
I talked way too much on this one, as I always do. You guys need to start telling me to shut up.
England, Tom Aspinall for king.
For king?
Yeah,
I don't think that's how it works.
Yes, it
Unless he
is.
usurps the king and takes the throne.
£2.50 for members.
£2.50. £2.99 for members. You get the full thing.
Sign up
Sign up, get all the bullshit, all of our bullshit takes.
now.